In this video, we'll learn how to pass a receipt voucher in Tally Prime. So we have already created a company and we are in Gateway of Tally. So to pass a receipt voucher, we go to our voucher options. In the right hand side, we have an option called Receipt. The shortcut key is F6. So you can press a receipt voucher and you get a receipt voucher here. So before passing a receipt voucher, we'll understand what is receipt and what are the types of transaction we pass receipt. So any money received by a business concern, it may be from sales or from any other source, or capital introduced by a owner. So all this kind of transactions will be passed in receipt voucher in Tally Prime. And the receipt voucher can be used in two different methods, a single entry mode and a double entry mode. What you are seeing in the screen is called as double entry mode, where it is asking a credit first and then a debit. So by default, Tally has a two ledgers, cash and profit and loss account as a two default ledgers. Whenever you create a new company, you get a cash and profit and loss account as a default ledger. But in receipt, you should not credit a cash. So when you are receiving a cash, it has to be debited. So either you need to debit cash or a bank and you have to credit the second ledger. So for example, we go with some transaction here. Mr. Nandish introduced a capital of 20 lakhs to the business. So generally in journal entry what we pass cash account debit 20 lakh to capital account credit 20 lakh. So this is what a JV we pass, right? So if it comes to a receipt, first it is asking for a credit. So what we have created in JV, we have created Nandish account. So the Nandish account is not created here. So you can go with the create option or the shortcut key is Alt C. So you can use a shortcut key Alt C, create Nandish account and a capital, and we'll accept the screen. So how much he has introduced? He has invested 20 lakh and he has invested through cash. See, when it comes to a debit, it is asking for a cash ledger and the cash ledger is already created. So we go with cash ledger here and we'll pass a transaction and we give a narration. Whenever you pass a transactions, you have to give a narration so that in the future you can easily identify why you have passed this transaction, what is the purpose of passing this transaction. If you leave blank, for the time being you can understand this is the adjustment what we have done or this is a transaction what we have passed. But after a few days or a few months, so we'll be rethinking that why we have passed a transaction like this. So to avoid this kind of scenarios, we give a narration why we have used this voucher and the transaction. So we go with a narration like being capital introduced by Anandish of rupees 20 lakh. So if you give a narration like this, whenever you open a transaction, you can easily understand what the transaction is. Or if the third person comes to check your accounts, by seeing a narration, you can analyze your transaction, whether it is correct or wrong. So this transaction we are passing in double entry system. So where it is asking particulars, debit and credit. So we'll accept it. And if you're not familiar with credit and debit, if you're familiar with to and by, you can go to F12 configuration. So there is a first option called use debit or credit instead of to and by during a voucher entry. You can disable this option to no and accept it. So that you can observe here, instead of debit and credit, you are getting to and by. So as per your convenient, you can configure your vouchers and you can pass a transaction. So the same transaction will pass it in single entry mode. So how to change a voucher from double entry to single entry mode? So in the shortcut key panel, you have a shortcut key called change mode. The shortcut key is H. Below that you have a two lines. If you have a two lines, press Control. And if you have a one line like this, one line with a J. So if it is one line with J, then Alt J. If it is two lines with H, then it is Control H. So we go with change mode option. So we are in double entry system. So we go with single entry mode now. So in single entry mode, it will ask accounts in the top of the particulars, and in the bottom it asks particulars and amount. It will not ask debit and credit. So accounts will act as debit. Always accounts will act as debit in receipt voucher. So in this account, we have to take either cash or bank ledgers. So we'll pass same transaction. Nandish introduced a capital of 20 lakh. So we go with cash. He has introduced a cash, and we go with Nandish. See, the Nandish ledger is already created, but it is not displaying in accounts field because Nandish has been created under capital account. Does not created under cash in hand or a bank account. So it is not displaying here. So we go with Nandish and we give 20 lakh here again. And the same narration will pass, being capital introduced by a Nandish of rupees 20 lakh. So this is how you can pass a cash receipt entries in two different modes, single entry mode and even in a double entry mode. So we'll accept this transaction. So next we'll pass one bank transaction also. We'll go with the transaction bank interest received of rupees 150. So in this I need to debit bank, right? The transaction will be like bank account debit to bank interest account. This was a transaction usually we need to pass. So in this we need to debit bank ledger. The bank ledger is not created. So we can go with the option called create, and we can create a name called bank under bank account, and it asks account number, IFSC code, shift code, bank name, branch. All these things we'll discuss in the banking video. So we'll create a bank, and next we need to credit a bank interest account. Even that is not created. You can use Alt C as a shortcut key. You can go with the shortcut key option, create. We'll create bank interest received. So it should be under indirect income. So we are receiving an interest through indirect income. If we are paying a bank interest, then it will be our indirect expenses. So we'll pass 150 rupees. So we'll give a narration. So once you enter a value, you'll be getting a bank allocation screen. So how you are receiving it. So all these things we'll discuss in the banking topic. So at present we'll skip this, and you can give a narration being bank interest received of rupees 150, and we'll accept the screen. So this is how you can pass a transaction. So once you pass a transaction, you can use a page up option to see a transaction if it is just now passed and it is in a single entry system. If you want to see the same transaction in a double entry system, you can go with the change mode option. You can select double entry and you can check, and you can also save the transaction, which means you can switch from single entry to double entry or double entry to single entry at any point of time, it doesn't affect your books of accounts or a transaction. So this is how you can pass a receipt transactions. Thank you.